My name is Ken Barrett. I've worked with Quaker Bolivia Link since its foundation in 1995. In that time, we've financed, run, administered, monitored over 100 development projects among the poorest people in the poorest country in the whole of South America. So why Bolivia? Well, as it shows here, only 1 house in 5 has running water. It is the least developed, therefore the poorest country in South America. In rural areas, 2 out of 10 children die before reaching their 5th birthday. But as we've found, small amounts of carefully directed aid can bring real improvements. And Bolivia is there, you can see on the map, it's the yellow country in the centre. It's dominated by the Andes in the west and by the Pampas lowlands and rainforest jungle in the east. One of the important features of Bolivia is that it's landlocked, it has no access to the ocean, which of course inevitably keeps it from trading and keeps it a poorer country. So, Bolivia trivia. And it says here, Bolivia is 4 times the area of the UK, or as big as Texas and California put together, but it has a population of only 8 million, whereas California has a population on its own of 34 million. So you can see there's a lot of open wilderness space in Bolivia. And some idea of the poverty, 70% of rural women are functionally illiterate. 90% of the nation roads are unpaved. That means rubble, dust, mud. And again, only 1 house in 5 in rural communities has running water. Now, one of the important features about Bolivia is that 65% of the population is pure indigenous. And it's as if we think in the States here that instead of 2 or 3 million Native Americans we have, out of 300 million inhabitants, 200 million would be Native Americans. You can see in this picture here, there's an idea of the poverty. These women are Aymara, you can tell by their little bowler hats. And their house is made of mud bricks. It's a straw roof. It'll be a mud floor, a dirt floor, and no window, just sacking. The door you can see is open. It might have a wooden door, it might just have sacking you draw across. So we are really looking at extreme poverty here. But Bolivia is an incredibly beautiful country. It's dramatic scenery. You can see here we're on the Altiplano, that's the huge plateau, which is at 12,500 feet, and is as big as England, and it's where a couple of million Bolivians live. The mountain in the background is Yampu, which is just under 21,000 feet, so these are real mountains. These aren't the little things like Mount McKinley. And travelling through Bolivia is always a trial. There's a road here, which is typical travelling through the Bolivian Andes, and all the time you've got that spectacular scenery. And of course, Lake Titicaca, which is famous as being the highest navigable lake in the world. The surface is at about 12,400 feet. And in places it's so big you can't see the other side. In the distant snow-capped mountains of the Cordillera Real. In the foreground, interestingly, are Inca terraces. Now, the remains of Inca terraces. The Incas came to Bolivia just 50 years before the Spanish arrived. And it was the Incas that the Spanish wrote about. They encountered them. And they didn't write anything about the Aymara because they'd been already conquered. So we know about the Incas and we don't know about the Aymara. On the lake again with its ubiquitous llamas. Now, travelling or living in the Bolivian Andes, you can see that the state of the housing here, it's pretty rough. Stone houses, straw roofs. This particular village is called Ancoma. It's at 14,000, just over 14,000 feet. There are no crops grow here. There's just grazing for the llamas. And this village trades its llama fleece with a village lower down the valley where they grow potatoes. And they in turn trade with a village further down where they grow beans, and further down where they grow citrus fruit. So there is a whole chain of trade between Bolivian communities. And here we are in the Altiplano again, at over 12,500 feet. The temperature here it's cold every day. It gets up to maybe 66, 65 in the daytime because you're near the equator. But it's freezing 200 nights a year. So the question is, out there in the bleak Altiplano, how do the people keep warm at night? You look, there's no firewood, There's no grass to burn particularly, no logs. So how do they keep warm? And the answer is, there's no fuel for heating. They just wrap up in a warm blanket. And when you're in these houses, you just expect to be cold, and the people expect to be cold. We in our country have this belief that we will always should be warm. And the Bolivians up on the Altiplano know that every night in their life is cold, and they keep their gloves and their coats on and wrap themselves up in a blanket. So what we've done is bring water to the Andean villages. You can see this little girl here has got a pipe outside her house with a faucet. The next day it would have had a concrete pillar added to it. But she now will go to school. The figures are, the statistics are, that once we put water delivered to a house outside the door, then 25% more girls go to school. Because they're not carrying water all day. Typically, children, and it's usually the girls, will spend their days carrying water from a distant source, a stream, a well, to the house. Suddenly there's water in the house, or right outside the house, and mum and dad say, off you go to school. Now, just reaching some of our communities can be hair-raising. There are long journeys like this through the mountains, and you can be a whole day going 100 miles. Some of the communities are extremely remote and isolated. This was a road we went on last year to a village high in the Andes at 14,000 odd feet, and at the top, two of us from the QBL board looked back down there along the road, and we realised there wasn't another single vehicle. You can look on that twisting road there and there isn't one vehicle. This is real isolation. Now, irrigation. We brought irrigation systems to several villages. This one here is called Kichiwachini, and they get the water from the glacial melt stream in the background, and we build a tank and a whole distribution system around the fields. And so the people in this particular village and several others in the area can now grow their crops throughout the long dry season, and they can also sell them in the local markets. What we like about our projects is that the people do the hard physical work themselves. We don't bring in Americans and European volunteers. The people there do it, and it gives them their ownership, their pride, that it's their system. And in this village, I think this is Patata, they're laying the pipes here, and there were 2 miles of piping. They don't just put them on the ground, they have to dig a trench a metre deep, 3.5 feet deep, to put all the pipes in. So for a village to get its water supply or its irrigation is several weeks of real back-breaking work. And here you see the engineers, the technicians, and laying a pipe supplying water to the houses is quite an exercise in logistics. The houses you might just be able to see away on the left there, little white dots. So it's not bringing piping water across fields, nice flat fields. You have to get around the spurs and the ridges and work out the pressure and the pressure waves and the volume of water. It's a pretty technical undertaking. And we now have over 40 villages who've got QBL water supplies. That's 40 villages with families like this, with a faucet outside their house and constant, safe running water, and that's a transformation. That really makes a huge difference in their lives. They're still poor, but they've taken a first step up the ladder out of poverty, a crucial step. And it cuts down on diarrhea, intestinal parasites, and we hope and we know it discourages them from migrating to the city, where they lose their culture, their language, their religion, and they merely exchange rural poverty for urban poverty. In this village in Sivinkani, away out on the Altiplano, we put 23 pumps like this, because out here on the flat plateau there isn't gravity feed. And the pump is about 15 meters deep, say almost 50 feet deep, where there is abundant fresh and safe water. It just needs a few pumps of the handle and you've got your bucket full of water. The woman in the picture here told us that before she had her pump, in fact she burst into tears when she told us, she had to walk 4 hours every day carrying water across those fields behind. And this was water also for her sheep. So for her, this has been a transformation. And her husband said that he lived in the village for 60 years, he's 60-year-old, and QBL were the first aid group to come in and do anything for them. He said that foreign governments, the US and European governments, had given millions of dollars to their government, but none of it ever came through to them. By the lake again, Lake Titicaca, there's a community here just putting in their water system, which has been finished now for a couple of years. This is San Martin, and you can see, I put that in to show you the tank here, the big solid concrete tank which will store the water and carry it through a system, a network of pipes to all the houses down below. In the distance, by the way, the mountains away in the distance is in Peru. You're looking across the lake into Peru. And as with all our projects, our water projects, there's an education element. This village is Chuchalaya, and the children here are taught, and all the parents too, about washing their hands, about hygiene, after you've been to the bathroom, and before preparing food. And even old people get this education. And all the children are taught how to brush their teeth, because sadly candies and soda have arrived in some of the remote villages, and so there's tooth decay. But they're all given toothpaste and toothbrushes and taught about care of their teeth that come with a fresh QBL water supply. And one other guy with his water, you can see in the background, his house is pretty rudimentary, but it's got glass windows and a door and a plastered front. It's a little step up, but it's still desperate poverty. But at least now he has running water. And in the village of Paicapampa, every single house in the village has a latrine like this, and the latrine has a washing bowl outside, it has a flushing toilet, it has a shower. And for the village of Paicapampa, this has been a dramatic change. And the other important strain of our work is building greenhouses. We've built well over 400 greenhouses like this on the Altiplano, and inside you can see they're growing healthy, fresh vegetables. Here is one of our greenhouses. In fact, this is the very first greenhouse we built in the village of Suriquinha. And if you look in the background, you can see the flat, bleak, cold Altiplano. Inside, there are vegetables growing, carrots, onions, peppers, tomatoes, lettuce, chard, and on the lower side to the right they have chickens, and the chickens, they will eat the tops from the carrots and the onions, the leaves, and the chicken droppings will be dug back into the soil. So it's a whole self-contained system. As it says up there, 200 nights of the year have frost. It's a 9-month dry season, and the soil quality is pretty poor up there. But now at least every family in this village and several other villages has a greenhouse where they can grow their own food and quite often have a surplus to sell in local markets. Here is one of the families in a neighbouring village with their supply, their greenhouse. You can see in the background, interestingly, the water supply, because having a greenhouse, growing crops takes a great deal of water. And so all the greenhouses have to have some sort of water supply. "95% of the children on the Altiplano are anemic. So we encourage our technicians in La Paz, encourage the people to grow dark green vegetables, like the Swiss chard on the right here. And this little guy, I like him, is showing us that down in his village, every yellow roof is a greenhouse, and it goes round the corner of the valley as well at the bottom. So there are 10, 15 greenhouses in his village, all growing nice, healthy food. Then what you can do, and several people have done, is sponsor a QBL greenhouse. And this was sponsored by a young man called Jordan in Ohio, who bought the greenhouse for $600. And the sign says, "Gracias, Jordan, por nuestro invernadero." Thanks, Jordan, for our greenhouse. And aren't they terrific kids? $600 well spent. you can see incidentally in the background there are roses growing. And isn't that beautiful that the people want to grow roses? So we have a technical team. Without our team in La Paz, we couldn't do this. It needs expertise. So our team of 4 people and an accountant. They plan the projects, they supervise the construction of the projects, they monitor the projects. That means they go back long term, for up to 3 years they will go back and keep checking, because things do go wrong. In the best planned of projects, there'll be broken pipes, there'll be doors that don't fit properly maybe, and there'll be insect plague in a greenhouse. So we keep going back and checking that everything's okay. And even the planning process can take 2 or 3 weeks, working with the people to plan what can we do with them. Do they need water? Do they need irrigation? Do they need pasture improvements or greenhouses? And importantly, our team are all Bolivians. They're Aymara speaking. They've got themselves to university to graduate as agricultural technicians, and they're giving back to their own people. And here are some of our team of technicians. The boss, Lourdes Fantani, is on the bottom left. She is dynamic and very knowledgeable and a real force in the organisation. We owe a lot to her, but we have to pay their salaries. And that's part of the dreaded, you hear, administration costs. But if we didn't spend money on salaries for technicians, the projects would not happen. But again, part of our work is the training. I can see one of them here, Sandra Laura, one of our people, teaching these people below how to use their greenhouse, because they've never had a greenhouse before. It's something new to them. So they want to know about crop rotation, choosing different vegetables, about ventilation, about irrigation, about control of pests. And there's a lot to learn. You can't just hand over a greenhouse and say, here you are, grow something. So again, if you like, this is administration. Sandra there, we have to pay her. It's her job to do this. So don't always be suspicious when you donate money to an organisation. Don't naturally be suspicious that their administration costs are 20, 25%, 30%. A lot of it is absolutely essential. And here's one of our guys who no longer works with us, Juan. He's handing over, in this particular village, every family got a cow, a pedigree cow, and 1 bull for the whole village. And then in the year 2000 we built this Amakari Health Centre by Lake Titicaca in an area with no other medical facilities in the region whatsoever. A long walk to a hospital, a small hospital belonging to the Bolivian Navy on Lake Titicaca, where there was sometimes a doctor, sometimes not. So now we have this beautiful hospital with medical staff, and it was paid for largely by Irish Quakers, who in the year 2000 each gave 1 day's salary, and the Irish government gave us a large grant as well. It says, QBL built and equipped the centre in a remote area by Lake Titicaca where there was no previous access to local healthcare. And here are some of the medical staff in the hospital. And you can see the date on this is 2004, so this place has been running now for several years, and we're very proud of it. A lot of the work is going out into the communities, taking blood pressure tests. We even have a dentist there who deals with the problems caused by soda and candies and chocolates. And she has patients who come from across the lake from Peru, because they've heard on the other side, on the Bolivian side, there is a dentist. So Peruvians often come across Lake Titicaca in the little boats to get their teeth filled and pulled. So here, as I say, we're going out into local communities, doing blood pressure tests. There is a suspicion among some of the people that the hospital is the last place to go to, is a place, the last resort where you go to die, when all else has failed. So a lot of the time is spent by the nurses going out to visit the people in their homes, in their villages, and monitoring their health. So, this is what QBL is all about. It's a future with hope for these children you can see here and many, many other villages. And we have got work ahead of us for many years. There are so many communities, villages, little groups of houses that we haven't reached yet. And we can do it only with your help to reach some of the poorest people in the poorest country of South America, a forgotten country. It doesn't reach our headlines. So how can I partner QBL? How can you partner QBL? Well, there have been over 140 Quaker meetings who've supported us with donations, some of them regular and very generous. These meetings are in US, UK, Ireland and in Germany. The Germans, Quakers, send us about 5,000 euros, $6,000 or $7,000 every year. So your meeting could sponsor a family greenhouse for $600. It could sponsor a water supply for a family for just $250. So one family would have a permanent supply of water. Or a whole village water system for $12,000. Sounds a lot of money, but there are meetings who've done this. I think of Salisbury meeting in the south of England have paid for a whole village water system. So there we are, Quaker Bolivia link. Keep in contact with us. In fact, the email is there, contact us at qbl.org. And the website is an easy one to remember, and it's a super website, www.qbl.org. And thank you, all of you. This is remarkable work being done.